Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello, welcome back to Soul Archaeology. I'm so happy to be back here with you. It was a pretty crazy week. I think we can all agree. The last few weeks have been quite intense with the Mars energy, the Plutonic energy, with Mars and Venus conjunct, which is something we're still moving through, which begins a real deep dive into our relational framework, into the relationship between the masculine and feminine within us and within our relationships. It's something we'll be continuing to focus on as we move into eclipse season. The window is officially open for our first eclipse on March 25th, and I always feel like the energy begins to build about a month beforehand. So, we're moving towards that, and we'll have two eclipses in Aries and Libra in March and April. On April 8th is our second one. So there's so much sort of building and reworking happening at the same time. We're breaking down the patterns, the systems, the frameworks that are no longer working for us as we simultaneously, build new ways, build new systems. And these are internal systems, but they're also external systems within our lives, internal systems, programs, beliefs. And with Pluto interacting so much with this energy, as it's been activating Mars, Venus, the Sun, and Mercury earlier on in the month, it's just really revealing a lot, and I know I've talked to so many of you and so many of my clients navigating really remarkable shifts, but also a lot of revealing, a lot of deep dives. This is the type of energy, specifically with Chiron and the North Node conjunct, that we can't go backwards. We can't continue the same patterning. It's really holding us accountable to aligning with the frequency we say we want to align with. And it's confronting. So it's such an important time to really pay attention to what's coming up. Give yourself enough space to move through it, feel through it, and come out the other side, with the resources and tools to begin to lay framework for new ways, new pathways. This week we have a square between Mars and Jupiter, so that could bring some of these Mars themes further to the surface. Mars is really getting hit this month in particular, and as it transits through Aquarius, it's really showing us where we are, sort of our mind-body connection lies, where the activation is, where it's bringing us to in our past framework, the wound, and where we're responding from, where the mental program is that's sort of bringing it to the surface. We're still in that loose Venus-Mars conjunction. Mars is at 9 degrees, Venus is at 11, so they're still interacting quite a bit. And what's interesting is we'll also have, we're starting to move towards a Sun, Mercury, and Saturn conjunction as well, which will happen towards the end of the week. And Saturn is a big player right now too, and that's a lot of what this episode is about. It's about discipline and responsibility, finding and resourcing our inner adult, our inner savior, our inner warrior, our higher self, the part of us that can take the reins and say, okay, I see things feel a little chaotic right now. How can we find space, regulation, and perhaps a new pathway that wasn't there before? So many inner child, past life, ancestral activations occurring right now, and it's really important to give yourself space to access that discipline, the Saturnian within us. I know we've been talking a lot about Saturn. We had the episode with Kristen Erlacher a few episodes ago, which is a really great place to start before you listen to this episode, because it talks a lot about self-responsibility and discipline and how we can work with Saturn to bring abundance, joy, and fulfillment into our lives. And this last full moon we had in Virgo was opposite Saturn. It was just a really revealing time. So it's important to know that Saturn is maturing us, ripening us. It's asking for, especially as it moves through Pisces and will prepare to move into Aries next year, there's a real focus on maturation happening right now. And that maturation, I believe, begins with sort of like the last stage of maturation before you up level. Saturn really comes into play because it asks for us to refine our daily practices, our routines, and really get clear on where is this wounding, where is this activation coming from, what's holding me in the past framework, and how can I create new ways of showing up, responding in order to bump up into that next level, into that new way of being, into that sense of regulation and space where you're no longer hijacked by the wounding or by the other programs. This episode today is with Unique Hammond, which I'm so excited about. She's such an incredible bright light. She is someone who's walked the walk and therefore she talks the talk. So it's just fascinating to see where she's come from and how she's gotten to this space of true and real healing. I love learning from other women who have really embodied the work that they share. And I feel like so many of the people coming into my life lately are that. And it's just truly such an honor. Unique and I are friends, and we also have worked together. We've both worked with each other's medicine, which is so beautiful, and something that she's an integrative health and wellness coach, and she's a survivor of Crohn's disease. So she went all the way down into her roots and into her framework in order to really heal what was there that was creating the dis-ease in her life. And that's something that I really love about her, is that she holds herself to a really high standard, and she is extremely disciplined in how she lives her life because she truly values health and wealth. It's really fun to kind of listen to her background story, where she came from, running away and leaving home at 14 and maturing and moving through these different thresholds that she did, becoming a mother, and how she's been able to really utilize all of that growth and all of that medicine to live a very balanced and healthful life. I worked with her in 2022. I was just having a lot of weird sort of health imbalances occurring, and she gave me a very clear and direct path to healing, and it's something that I still stick with and implement today. And I know so many others who have their health has been significantly improved and impacted in a beautiful, positive way with her guidance. So it's really cool. But I specifically love how she weaves emotional and somatic health, and, actual wellness, like, nutrition together. That's in how we can sort of look at the underlying programs, subconscious programs that are running the somatic, experiences we have that impact our eating, that impact what we consume through our mouths. And so this is a really, really cool episode. I feel like it weaves really well into this timeline. I kind of held off releasing it. We recorded it at the end of January. You can kind of tell my throat is still I'm still recovering from that virus that I had, but I wanted to wait until we got into this Saturnian energy and started really getting into the accountability piece that we've kind of been focusing on the last few episodes, and how empowering that can be to know that you have the keys to your healing. And that's something I always bring my clients back to, is you are your own greatest healer, and you have the golden keys, and you have the power within you to change and to shift what's not serving you. And that really starts with accountability, self-responsibility, and discipline that can bring you back to and into alignment with self, whether it be eating or attuning to your inner child, somatic practices, rituals, whatever it is. We all benefit so much from really showing up for all of our parts and proving to them that we are in the driver's seat, that we care, that we're serious about finding alignment in our lives. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. It was a really fun one to record. I feel like her and I always have such lush, deep, wonderful conversations. So this is just basically one of those. So enjoy. Hello, Unique. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like this interview has been such a long time coming, and you've been on my mind since I started the podcast because you're just such an inspiration to me as far as just living well. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of yours. So when you invited me, I was like, yeah, of course.
That means the world. So I just want to spend a little time introducing you to our community. I think a lot of people probably are aware of you because you have such a great community of your own. And I think there's a lot of overlap, but I'd love to just spend a little time talking about your background. This podcast is so much about discussing and exploring people's journeys along the spiral of life and all the wild, twists and turns that life takes us on in order to really find alignment with ourselves. So I would love if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about where you're from, what has really shaped you in the way that you've needed to become who you are today. The different things. I know it's a big question. The different things along your path.
That is deep. That is yeah, that's a good question. So I am originally from Big Sur, California. I'm one of 8 children and very hippie parents. Obviously, when you end up with a name like Unique. I love it. I can't say that I was close to either of my parents, which is actually interesting to reflect on in this very moment. But I idolized my dad. So I was definitely a daddy's girl, even though he didn't know it.
With 8.
Yeah, because it's like like how do you put food in mouths of that many people? Having kids myself now, I look back and I'm like, I don't know how you did it. Like that's nuts. And they struggled 100%. They struggled. And my dad wasn't a person that was emotionally available, and my mom was just too busy to be emotionally available. So, I think what's interesting, and the reason why I'm going back that far, I don't know how far you want me to go back, but I remember my dad was a healer and he helped people. People would come to him. He would do body work on them. He would tell them how to eat to help themselves. And he taught yoga. He was a yogi. And I just admired him. He was a great storyteller, and he could do no wrong in my eyes, even though in retrospect, he wasn't a great dad, like he just wasn't. And that's okay. But it's interesting that I would have never called that I would have been called to service, to help others, to guide others. That just not something that I cultivated, not something that I was going after in life. And so the fact that here I am about to turn 48 and I guide others like my dad did when I was young is a very interesting thing. So when you say shape, many things have shaped me, but I think my dad left a lasting impressions in a lot of way, and how it wasn't easy work. I think, as you know, as being a practitioner as well, and working with people, that being of service to others is you have to have really broad shoulders. And I do think that that's probably why he didn't have a lot left for family, and guiding people, right? Like guiding and holding space. And he did physical body work. He physically worked with them, and then he taught them how to be in their bodies. And it was profound. So in my journey, I left home at a young age. I ran away when I was 14. And got a job living in Topanga where you are.
Yeah.
And I was
I love that.
And that shaped me too, because my mom and I did not have a great relationship. And I didn't like my mom because of that. Like she wasn't nice to me. And I was like, well, I don't like you.
Yeah.
I like my dad, but he's emotionally unavailable. So that doesn't work. So I just felt like I was this balloon and I felt like I needed to leave. I just was like, I felt called to leave at a very young age. So I did. And the family I ended up with had a very strong mother. And she was, I was always taught like a woman shouldn't have a career, a woman should take care of children and be home, and like very traditional values. Um, you know, taught to like cook and clean and take care of your man. And I just remember being like, I don't know why this doesn't resonate with me, but I mean, I love the concept of all of it, but man should take care of woman too. And this should be a togetherness, not you know, a one-sided thing. But so the mother of that household was, this powerful music producer, music manager, manages big bands, and she was just a badass. And I just remember being like, I want to be a badass. Not to say that my mom wasn't. Like, again, in retrospect, my mom was a badass. Staying home and taking care of kids is one of the hardest things a woman can do. Because, it's just like you have to have broad shoulders to do that. But at the time, I just remember going, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to be my mom. I want to be more like my dad, but not consciously. So she really gave me this permission to be as big as I could go. Whereas my mom was always trying to be like, no, be a girl, work is for men, business is for men. Like, you don't want to be a manly woman. You want to be a feminine. Well, like she had all of these real interesting, like confining concepts that I just didn't relate to. So the mom of this house where I was a nanny, she was expansive. She kind of expanded my ideas of what I could be. And I think in the end, what it gave me was, I'm here to get in touch deeply with who I am, not to be anybody's idea or version of what I should be. So I think in the end, it was like these influences that shaped me. I think where I am now, you could say, well, my dad had a profound impact, because here I am, not in his shoes, but on a similar path. So
it's so cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So then to connect it even more to where my community is very well educated, is that I left home, I started working. At a young age, I got married. I started a music company with my now ex, which I helped him build and run for 12 years, and had kids together, and left that marriage because, well, I married my narcissistic father, and that just wasn't ultimately was important, but also made me realize that I didn't need that. And, and so moving on was important growth as well, to kind of go, hey, that's okay, nice idea, but not really going to work out. And continued on my career path and became an executive producer, and moved on from the music industry and got more on the film side. And when the divorce finally came through, not soon after, that's when I became very ill and my health was declining. And this was like in my late 20s, early 30s, diagnosed at 34 with Crohn's disease. And up until that point, from the time I left home, my dad was really into nutrition and nourishment. And it was really about nourishment. And I would say if it geared anything, it would probably gear to be a little more Weston A. Price, if anything.
Okay.
Like protein was medicine. Like that is really how he spoke about it. He's like, protein is medicine and vegetables are important, and, nourishing your body is really important. So those, even though I didn't have a concept of them at the time, they stayed with me, obviously, because when I left home, I wasn't raised with sugar, and I was like, sugar is the best thing in the world. And coffee's amazing, and alcohol, hello.
Right.
Allow me to party.
Yeah.
and now I shall party. And yeah, so much has shaped. And what's interesting too is so much what has shaped me has been intuition, following an intuition. I mean, who at 14 goes, I need to leave?
Yeah,
I did.
That's profound.
And I looked at my kids when they were 14 and I thought, dear God, please don't leave. Please. But I also think as a parent, you have to create a pretty unwelcoming environment for someone of that age to want to leave, as well. So,
right.
It's complex, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For you to weigh that intuitively at that age, and to know that it was better for you to be absent from the household than it was to, take the risk of being independent at that age. It's just incredible.
I do think and you can tell me if this lines up, but I felt very much in my Pisces when I was a young girl.
Yeah.
And very sun sign. And the visual that came to me was I had this little light inside of me that was getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And if I didn't leave, it was going to be snuffed out.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I either stay and lose my light, or I leave and see where it takes me. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that leaving home at that age with no money and just a little bag, and for me to be here today, and for every step of the way, it was almost like my path was illuminated. Yeah. And I was never in harm's way. Wow. And I was always taken care of. And it's like, I think back and I'm just like, that's really kind of unbelievable, especially deciding to come to a place like LA. You're like, yeah, so many things can go wrong.
Of course. Yeah. But for you to listen to that at that age, you know, and to say like, this light is what sustains me. This light is what guides me. And if I let go of it, you know, I lose myself, you know, and it's just incredible that you, number one, logistically were able to do that and make it to LA and find work and all of the things. It's incredible. But then also to enter into a space of expansion, you know, seeing a new world and experiencing so many new things and being, you know, guided by this new expansive mother figure. It's really incredible. But I find that often that it takes that really big leap of faith to click into your power to then shift your trajectory, you know, to shift onto a new timeline. But it does take that risk in the beginning, you know?
That leap of faith that I didn't know was a leap of faith, but somehow staying where I was not a choice I could make. You know, it's an interesting thing. Could I have stayed? Yes, of course. But yeah, so many things shaped me. Having a strong female figure. My mom was interesting because I think she was stronger than she knew, but her kind of a lack of self-esteem kept her small. And she kind of, I always thought of her as in my dad's shadow, and yet somehow powerfully manipulating the whole narrative.
Yeah. Isn't it wild how that happens with, yeah. It's incredible, like just witnessing women in that role and how I honestly think it's been survival that has had to, you know, through centuries of being oppressed and sort of, you know, held within these boxes. And when you're stripped of your, you know, identity in certain ways and then become a house, you know, a caregiver and a housemaker and or a homemaker and a mother, and it's almost like this survival clicks on, and it's sort of like, I have to stay alive, you know, so I have to, it can become quite manipulative, you know, in certain ways. I think that's why we see so much of the sort of attachment trauma now and like, you know, our generations following, when that really began to split off, those traditional roles began to transform. And it's incredible to see how those survival mechanisms kicked on, you know, for them.
Generational traumas, right? Of women not being celebrated and lifted up. Like, I don't know if you watch all the shows that I watch, but I've watched enough of the, like, you know, TV shows, period pieces. And it's always the mother of the king who's like the evil, you know, manipulator. And you're just like, she's surviving in a climate where her only power is her ability to manipulate her son, right?
Yeah, exactly. We share our love for period pieces, which is so
we
fun.
do.
But you're exactly right. It's sort of that, like, the puppeteer in the background, you know, and it's so dangerous. And it's very sad, of course, you know, that was the only way to sort of have any sense of safety or control, you know, but now I think we're experiencing, of course, this whole revolution and with the feminine, and are moving out of that more dark feminine and into the light, you know, and what it looks like to be fully embodied in the light feminine, and also the union of the masculine and feminine, which is a beautiful opportunity that our generation gets to have now, you know, as we move forward. So
yeah, and there's no proof. You don't have to prove you're powerful. You know, it's like, I think in those times it was like they were trying to exert some sort of power, and to actually, for me, the less I exert or try to prove myself, the more powerful I feel, the more it's like sitting and listening and welcoming in information without feeling the need to change it or manipulate it, or to kind of just let it come in. So yeah, it's interesting. My mom does. She was very much, I always felt like born in the wrong era, because
Really?
It was like, anyway.
Yeah. Did you think she should have been in a like an earlier era?
Yeah. She wore gloves and hats and dresses, and she was very much a period piece herself. So it was interesting that she had her power in the shadows, because I was like,
that's so wild. Yeah. But it is true. It's like there's, that generational trauma runs deep, and it, is inherited. And then, if we don't have awareness around it, it's pretty sticky, to clear out of our field. So, so you reached a point where you were kind of like almost like rebelling against the systems, the frameworks of your childhood in a way, and then you were stopped in your tracks. Was that around your Saturn return? You said your late 20s?
That's a good question. It might have been. So, without knowing astrology nearly well enough, it could have been. Yeah, it was in my late 20s, so it would have been, right?
Yeah, which is the point where we begin to take the reins of our lives and mature into that adult. I don't think we actually become adults until we're 28 to 30, honestly, maybe 30.
I'm going to go ahead and put it out there that I don't think it's an age. I think it's
completely.
I think it's I would say that you could say leaving home and was mature. I don't think it was mature. I think it was my own survival instinct of self,
right.
of some intuition, right? I only feel like I matured, and I had kids when I was 21. My daughter, I had her at 23, so I was pregnant at 22. I always wanted to be, the irony of all of it was I always wanted to be a mom, but I always wanted to have that like mom work-life balance. I wanted that for myself. But maturity really only came for me personally through my illness. Maturity and self-love. I did not value my wins in life. I spent a lot of time really tearing myself down. I definitely was not confident. So you could be like, oh, you left home, confidence. No, something else can drive those kind of things,
right.
Like
so
it was
true.
more intuition that drove it versus confidence. So I would say maturity, I grew up through my disease. Maturity and self-love all bloomed from that experience.
I love that you mentioned that, because it is so true. Like we have the survival that sort of runs the show until I think, we reach a point where we have to be, brought into that underworld space of really examining, where are we pulling from? Are we pulling from a wound? Are we running? Are we surviving? Or is this in our highest alignment? Is this in alignment with who we, our most authentic self, or our fullest embodiment of our power? And those cataclysmic sort of events, I often see it with people that it's an illness, or it's a death of someone they love, or a divorce, or, these things that are so out of our control, that bring us into a deeper layer of self. And it sounds like, I mean, this is part of the reason you're such an inspiration to me, but like you use that event, you didn't drop into the victim perpetrator framework. You harnessed it as an alchemizing event, to let it really transform you, and then transform the trajectory of your life. Like you're a different person, and you've held on to that, that sort of empowered stance, or I don't know I guess that empowered essence through all of this, which I love, because I don't ever hear you drop into any type of like victim mindset. I feel like it's almost not even in your vocabulary.
No, I think of my disease as an invitation. It was an invitation. It was an invitation from, you can call it the universe, you can call it the poor way I treated my body, because I was totally disconnected from it. I was not embodied. I was out of body. I was out in the world looking for somebody else to complete me. I was out in the world thinking a relationship was where I was going to find myself. I was out in the world thinking getting paid a lot of money in this job and in this title was going to make me feel something. I was out there looking. And I think what life did was give me this opportunity to get inside and look around. And I did therapy for 10 years. So you would say like intensive therapy, where I was going once a week, and for years. And I remember the day that it hit me that I needed to leave my husband. The therapist looked at me and she said, I was wondering how long that was going to take you.
Wow.
Like,
wow.
It's like, he does not love you. You're a property item.
Wow.
I figured
That's a good
that
therapist,
though.
though.
Yeah. Well,
Let you
yeah,
get to
she
that
knew
point.
that I had to come to it, because to move through a divorce with 2 young children, there has to be a real sense of purpose and understanding of why. And for anybody else to tell you that, because I bumped up a lot of resistance from my ex. I bumped up resistance from my family, just everywhere. I bumped into resistance, people going, don't leave, work it out. And I'm like, I've been trying to work it out for 10 years. At what point do you go, this can't be worked out?
Yeah.
And honor that. So yeah, the disease came along, and there was still this part of me that thought something else is going to save me from myself, or someone else, or, so the disease kind of came in and went, you need to save yourself. And your disease is of the body, but it's also of the mind and the spirit. And you need to stop running, because I was really good at running. I mean, that leaving home solved a lot of problems. So I was like, hey, this is a great way to solve problems. Just
totally
keep going. And so it taught me how to honor the most important relationship that I believe each one of us has in our human life, which is our body.
Yeah.
I did a lot of yoga, and in yoga, they're always saying you're not your body. And I'm like, oh, I disagree. We are profoundly our body. We would not be here with a body if we were not here for a soulful connection to our body.
Yeah.
And as a woman who grew up loathing her body and loathing herself, to learn deep love, unconditional love for my body was part of the healing process. And it transformed all the relationships in my life. Learning how to love my body in its most grotesque state, and accepting responsibility to be the co-healer of it with my body, but also accepting the responsibility that I had co-created this disease in my body, right? It was like, so everything that I chose to do empowered me versus, and there is that crossroads in any disease where it's like, why me?
Right.
And you can either identify with your disease and become it. And, the doctors, when they diagnosed me, they said, you should join support groups. This is a profound disease. And, you should look at the medications. And I looked into the support groups, and in there, I saw everybody feeling really sorry for themselves. And I realized that I did not want to become my disease.
Yeah.
I did not want to cultivate it in my body. I wanted to accept that it was there and that this was my reality at this moment in time, but that I could also change that reality. So I was really focused on the empowerment part, and I'm really thankful for it to this day. And, ultimately I suffered for a good 3 years before I found the protocol in Karen that I'm working with now. And so when I found it, after trying GAPS and the carb specific diet and paleo and all of these things, I felt really disheartened. I felt like, well, maybe this feeling that I have that I can figure this out and that I can reverse this disease in my body isn't, maybe it's not right. Maybe it was here to teach me how to love myself and accept myself, but maybe I'm not going to be able to heal my body. And, but there was this part, like that little part of me that left home with that little light. There was this part of me that went, there's somebody out there that gets this. There's somebody out there, probably kind of fringe, that gets this. And I was right.
Yeah. I love that so much. It's true. I think we all go through that, when there's something that occurs that's like cataclysmic like that, and it just sort of like, it rocks you to your core, and you have to drop into that underworld space. You have to do this, deep excavation, and you have to feel pain, the grief, the fear, all the things that are held within that space. There is like a natural process to sort of not victimize yourself, but just to feel bad, for yourself in a way. And I think some of that is navigable through inner child work, somatic work, and really attuning to the part that feels that, and then regaining your power, your strength, your resilience, your confidence, and your ability to not stay within that space. But what do you work with people that experience that space? Because I feel like it's such a theme for our times that we are a quote unquote victim to our experiences. And, we're a victim to the astrology, we're a victim to, all things happening in the world, but it's a sticky space to be there. It's sticky it keeps you held in disempowerment, So what is your, what is your advice for people that feel so sort of, weighed down or dominated by the challenges they're experiencing?
I mean, I would say that I guess I was a child of challenges. I grew up in a very poor family where food wasn't always readily available, and a warm environment wasn't always readily available. And yet there are parts of my childhood, despite the poverty, that were incredibly glorious. And I think that in life, two things can always be true. On one hand, there can always be suffering or challenges, but on the other hand, there's also incredible beauty. So it's not like one or the other. And I think for some people, they're focused solely on the one, not realizing that two things can be true, that yes, you can be poor, or you can be hungry, or you can have illness, but there is still great beauty, and there's still great opportunity, and there's still great love. And it's really, where are you focusing your energy? And what is the narrative? And also, how does the narrative of being the victim serve you? Because in the end, we have to accept that in some way it is serving us. And to be the victim, what does it serve? I was a person who couldn't say no. I always wanted to say no, but I felt like I didn't have the confidence to say no. I don't want to meet up with you. I don't have the energy. I don't, so when I was sick, I found myself getting into that really addictive space of like, oh no, I don't feel well tonight, I can't come. Right.
Oh, man.
It was like my ticket to ride.
Yes.
It was like the introvert in me was like, I got a ticket.
Yes.
And I don't have to, and I don't have to face the truth, which is I'm not up to it. I just want to stay home.
Yes.
I love you, but if you love me back, then you'll understand I just need to do my own thing. But so many people take it personally. And, it was like, I was always trying to manage other people's expectations, and please don't be mad at me. And now I'm like, you know what? I just need to stay put.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what one of the things I admire about you most is that you really are true to yourself and to your needs, and I love what you said about looking at what's beneath the surface of that space of victimization. Like what is keeping you held within that space? And that's really the key, because there's something subconscious that's at play. There's a program that's running that says it's safer to stay within this space, or it's comfier, or it's, more familiar to stay here than it is to crack through that barrier of discomfort and all the fear that becoming your own your own savior, your own, in your power. And that's the key always. It's like, where is that space? Like, what is the program, the belief that's, keeping us held in the victim space? Because that's where we suffer truly,
Yeah. Oh, and it's really addictive, using illness as a reason you can't do something. At a certain point, it was legitimate. I was pooping my pants, right? Hey, pooping my pants, can't get out tonight. Sorry. But I was the kind of person that I would be in horrible pain and I wouldn't want to let somebody down. So I would show up anyway and sit there in pain, not even present, because I didn't want to let somebody down. And so for me, then it was like, oh, I'm sick, I can't go. And it was a way to protect myself. But then I realized, I'm like, okay, if I get addicted to using my illness as a reason, even once I started to feel better, it became the reason. And it was like, therein lies that slippery slope, right? So at some point I had to go, I'm healthy and I need to choose to take care of myself. I'm getting healthier and I need to choose to take care of myself, not use my illness as an excuse. And also, it's back to the maturity point. And when we're an adult, I think we are an adult when we have the capacity to feel
Yes.
and
Oh, I
not
love that.
react. When we have the capacity to go, I want that, but the thing that I want is unhealthy for me, so I'm choosing not to have it. That maturity, that makes us an adult. The maturity to feel and respond versus react. Do reactions happen? Of course they do. But then the maturity to reflect and go, I would like to offer an apology because I can see how I processed that and took it totally the wrong way. And
Yeah.
I appreciate this opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
to stay in, to be powerful isn't to never be wrong. To be powerful is to fully embrace being wrong and learn from it, and to be able to embrace that part of the journey. And I think maturity is so far connected from age, and it's so far connected to the ability to self-evaluate and be the observer of ourselves. Like to heal me, I had to heal my relationship with food. I had to heal my self-loathing. I had to heal my relationship with my body. I had to heal so many layers in the process of healing. And all of the people who had done me wrong in my life that I hated, I had to love. For me, that was the journey, was not just to recognize that my hate was me, but to shift and begin to send love to all of those who I felt had done me wrong, to forgive and to let go. And what was amazing is as soon as I started sending love and recognizing that the burden I carried was my own, my body, everything began to transform in that space. So I was 37 when I started the protocol, but from 34 to 37, I did the emotional work because the diets weren't doing anything for me. And maybe you could say because I was so emotionally disconnected from my body, or if I wasn't disconnected from it, I was actively loathing it. So you can see how that wasn't necessarily a space where healing could happen.
Right. Yeah. And that's where all of this, begins, is it's sort of like it's looking at the emotional aspect and the emotional layers of the manifestation of disease in the body, which is so huge. And like looking at your relationship with it, where, the programs you grew up with, the conditioning, the conditioning just societally as well, the world we grew up in, but also, the physical aspect of as well. And what's interesting is that it all requires so much discipline, and I was talking about this yesterday, but I feel like discipline in our current reality has become sort of a dirty word, which is so interesting. And this is something I love. I get so much like medicine from just following you on Instagram, and the way you answer questions, it's just like, just do it, like discipline is such I feel like a big part of your work. And I appreciate that a lot because it's, in my mind, discipline is devotion, and devotion to self, devotion to family, devotion to source, whatever it is, devotion to the planet. And so if you wouldn't mind shedding a little light on how you reached that point of discipline and choosing to be healthy every day, because the fact that you're healthy isn't just because you want, you spent 4 or 5 years healing these different layers. It's because you choose it, right?
Every day I wake up and I choose to love my body by nourishing it what it needs. My mouth and my body argued for a long time. What my mouth wanted, what my mind wanted was one thing, and what my body needed was another. And there was this real disconnect. You look out in the health space and everybody talks about balance. Balance is have a great meal, have a glass of wine, have a dessert. That kind of balance didn't work for me. It just didn't. My body, I think part of maturity is meeting our body and honoring our body, right? I think we're all looking for somebody to tell us the answer. So we're following somebody else's truth. But to deeply relate to ourselves, I began to realize I needed to follow my truth. And that wasn't going to look like what everybody else was doing. And that's okay. I was no longer looking for that external validation. But how I got there was once I put my body into remission, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. First of all, I was scared that I would go into a flare. So I was like, okay, I got to stay on the straight and narrow. But I had to come to terms with that too. The languaging, straight and narrow. I have to be strict. So I didn't. After 2 years of being in remission, I started to I was following all these health people, and they were like, you need balance in your life. You shouldn't restrict. And so I started bringing in sugar and alcohol and, different things, and kind of playing with it. But not unconsciously, not following the herd, but going, this idea of balance, I'm curious. Let's see how my body does with it. And at the end of that year of alcohol and more sugar, and hey, if I wanted a dessert, I would have it. And I didn't cause a Crohn's flare, but I noticed I didn't feel as well. So I was like, well, am I here to eat whatever I want? What am I dedicated to? So I got clear to myself. It was like, I am dedicated to no flares for life. For the rest of my life, I am dedicated to caring for my body so well that I flourish. So I started working on the emotional components. I started to notice when I wanted dessert, or if I was eating, how was I actually feeling, connecting to feeling. And I would notice a lot of my relationships with sugar were emotional. A bad day, I'm going to come home and have some sweets. Good day, and all healthy, by the way. And I do healthy because it's if it's not good, if your body doesn't do well with it, then is it really healthy? Right.
Right.
So it was I was doing maple syrup and dark chocolate and honey and, just all of this really healthy, quote unquote, stuff. And my body didn't handle it well. But I also noticed that there was this emotional component to treats. So I started to sit with, I want that cookie. I would sit with it and go, are you okay to want? Is it okay to want?
Wow.
Without feeling the need to complete a cycle, can you just want? And I got to the point where I just felt it was oh, first of all, the emotional component, I want it. It's a treat. I had a hard day. It was a long shoot, whatever it was. I want this thing. To, wow, I'm okay wanting it, because what I figured out was if I uncoupled emotions from my food, that I could actually just focus on nourishing myself versus being dragged around by emotion. Bad day. I needed it. And then starting to notice the conversations I would have. It was oh, it's the holidays. I should be able to have a treat. And I'm like, wait, what?
Wow.
My body doesn't do well with treat. Why am I even entertaining this conversation? And I realized the word treat is so charged from childhood, right? So I was like, okay, let's reframe it as a choice. Dessert is nor here nor there, good nor bad. As a choice, is it the best thing for your goals and for your body?
I love that.
No emotion involved.
Yeah,
you know
takes the charge out.
I'm good. So dedication, discipline, mastery, self-love. I do think that they all kind of roll into the same thing, because I'm no longer looking for somebody else to give me the excuse to mistreat myself. I'm no longer looking for permission from anybody. I'm simply looking for permission to myself. Does this serve what I want most, which is to age gracefully, to not have a disease run my life, to wake up feeling great, to be in service, to have capacity to be in service of others? Okay, I know exactly what I'm here for. I'm here to nourish myself deeply and profoundly. And without emotions running the show, I can actually do that. Yeah. So food is just about nourishment for me. So I think uncoupling emotion was a big one, but also realizing, and this is a very funny one as a Pisces, that I didn't want emotions to rule my life. I wanted to feel them, but I didn't want them to dictate my direction. Wow. I want intuition to dictate my direction. I want to listen and cultivate intuition, but I don't want emotions to drive my life. So if I can be powerful and mature enough to sit with emotion and then go, cool. Yeah. But my goal is great health till the day I die. So my goal is way more important than anything else. So I wake up every day and I don't even think about it. I'm like, yay, I get to nourish this incredible, healthy body. And I'm so thankful for that.
It's incredible, because it seems like through the journey of evaluating your relationship with the food, it allowed you the space to actually go into the stories, the traumas, the stories, like the charge, like you said, because we can't, so much of what we consume, whether it be food or drinks or media or whatever information, it's tied to filling something, and it's tied to an emotion, like you said. And until we are like that maturational threshold you keep describing and maturing, I feel like that is so much about becoming, like you said, the master of all of these parts that are trying to run the show every day. There's like younger parts of us that are trying to grab the steering wheel, and it's like, all right, let's create enough space and discipline within our life where we can review why that's happening rather than just, either giving into it or, fighting it all the time. So it sounds like you had a complete full processing of those charges, which is really incredible and really important.
And it takes a lot of curiosity. I think it's getting out of the shame spiral, which is where I lived most of my life, was fear and shame. And to become the observer allows for curiosity, and curiosity very seldom welcome at the party of guilt and shame, and fear.
Wow.
And so to actually cultivate the observer who is curious and like, oh, that's really interesting. You're not even hungry right now, but you want to eat. What's that all about? Let's feel this. Let's feel into this. So yeah, I think, again, I'll go back and say that illness was an invitation should I want to accept it. And I had a moment where I thought I would go down the victim path, but then something deeper and bigger inside of me went, no, you got this. And interestingly enough, full circle, my dad's teachings of nourishment, rest, kindness, all the things that he couldn't be in his life, he taught very well. So I kind of went back to those teachings in the end of like, I need to not only find my guide, Karen was my guide, but then I need to become the healer.
Yeah, I love that. You were able to take all the parts and pieces of the people that who helped shape you through your life and then become your own healer, become your own savior, become your own parent, become your own adult, and that takes a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears. It takes a lot of maturation. It takes a lot of work,
It takes every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. Yeah. And it's, oh my gosh, well, I feel like I could talk to you forever. And you have such an incredible story. And I know just tell us a little bit about what your offerings are currently, what you're currently working on. I know you're doing some group work, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guide. Like I do think of myself as the guide, and in the process of my one-on-ones or groups or ongoing coaching, I try to really cultivate the healer within, because people hop from one protocol to the next because they reach that point of discomfort and excuse or boredom or whatever it is, the conversation, and they kind of, I talk about this wall of resistance that each one of us have within us to either make a new habit, or revert back to old habits. And so a lot of people will get to the point where they feel good and they'll bounce off the wall and revert to old habits instead of pushing through, which takes grit and curiosity and awareness to integrate healthy lifestyle choices, right? To integrate any habit, it takes grit at a certain point, because otherwise we just kind of bounce off and continue our cycle. So I really try to bring awareness to that in my groups and empower them. Yes, I am your guide, but you are the healer, because you're the one who is being called upon to show up for yourself every single day when I'm not there. You're being called upon. So can you show up for yourself, and what resistance will you uncover in that process?
Yeah, I love that. I think that is the greatest gift we can give as space holders, is empowerment. And so you do one-on-one work, you have group work,
Groups.
You have an amazing podcast.
Oh, thank you. Build protocols, tweak protocols. Just in any way that I can be a source of inspiration and support, I do it.
Yeah, well, we need it. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your inner work. Thank you for your service work, for holding space for those of us that are working with our relationship with emotions and food. And it's so perfect for you, Pisces, Scorpio rising. Like you are literally you're living in alignment with your chart. I love it so much.
I mean, I feel like I don't know if I entirely relate to Scorpio as Scorpio is seen out in the social world, but I do feel like I feel very much more in Capricorn and Scorpio. And it's interesting that I felt like I was really Pisces up until the point of my illness. Like, I don't know what that's all about, but
yeah. I mean, I think that we embody different parts of us when we really need it, and then that, like, we can live in the shadow or the light of our signs, so you can embrace, like, and mature through the sign as well. And I feel like you're definitely living in the highest expression of all of them, really. I mean, Pisces, the low expression of Pisces is addiction.
Yeah.
And dissociation.
A lot of addiction.
And you cut through so much of that dissociation and addiction to get to this space of true empowerment, which is, very conscious and amazing. So, yeah.
It is wild. I'm glad you know more about this than I do. And we've had sessions together and I always learn so much, but it's the addiction part was so strong in my younger years, like that desire to hide and to not feel, and addicted to that process. Yeah. To feel it can feel kind of scary,
It is. That's why feelings. That resistance while you're talking about, where it's like, oop, I'm hitting my threshold. It feels too scary, too much, too big, too much change. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many times will you push off that wall until finally you get to the wall and you feel that resistance and you feel the struggle and you're okay with it and you're like, this is okay, because what I'm about to do is change my history. I'm changing the story of my life, and to push through, to create mastery, to create dedication, discipline. It takes being able to go, I'm now ready to fully embrace the journey that I'm on and not go back to my old ways. And I think for a lot of people with food, going back to the old ways serves as a safety and a comfort, even if it doesn't serve their best health or wellness. So,
and that's patterns of all sorts, not just food, but like relational patterns, work patterns. And I always notice when people crack through that wall, that's where the entire, like, cellular transformation occurs, because they're proving to all of their parts that they're capable, they can work through difficulty, they can, so it's incredible. But I love that you have that sort of merging of the emotional, subconscious, and nutrition, because it's so huge. It's so needed in this world. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you, by the way. Your guidance and everything.
Much.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've really enjoyed our sessions together.
Yeah, me too. I know you're just such a gift. And thank you for being here. I will be linking your information so everyone can find you and learn how to work with you and how to listen to your podcast and follow you on Instagram, which is such a gift as well, because you provide so much information there. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to share this. So let me know how I can be a part of putting it out there.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, thank you, Unique.
Thank you.